Hi everybody, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking endocrine system. Today we're going to start talking about a system that really you probably haven't heard a whole lot about, the endocrine system. And
If you put that straitjacket on me, I'm going to pull your endocrine system out of your body and make a hat out of it.
I don't know about making it into a hat. However, it could make a pretty good sandwich. Anyways, let's take a look at what the endocrine system does for us. Basically, it helps us to regulate all of these metabolic processes that are happening inside of our body. So there's a lot going on with the endocrine system. It's extremely important. Many things are happening at once. What is going to be controlling all these metabolic processes are chemicals called hormones. A hormone is a chemical that is made by one cell, but it affects the activity in another cell. So we're going to take a look at where these hormones are being made, and we'll be also looking at what sort of cells that they're going to be affecting. Whatever cell they do affect, we just give it a generic term. We call it a target cell. So that's the target for that hormone. There's a bunch of different kinds of hormones, but we can put them into one of these three categories. We're going to start with the steroid hormones, and these are things that you've heard of steroids before. We talked a little bit about steroids in the past, but these steroid hormones, because they're made up of lipids, they're able to pass through the cell membrane, which is also a type of lipid. So let's take a look at this wonderful drawing. You're going to see that there are numbers in circles. So those numbers are going to represent different things that are happening in a steroid hormone. And so you may need to pause the video to be able to write some of these things down as we go through. Hormones are typically made in glands, and that's what we're going to be referring to as the hormone producing cell in that gland. So in step one, that hormone, once it's made, is going to diffuse from the gland into the bloodstream. Those dark ovals are going to represent the hormones. It's going to travel through the bloodstream until it reaches, at step number two, the target cell. Remember, because steroids are a type of lipid, it can diffuse through the cell membrane. In step three, the hormone diffuses from the blood into the target cell. Once in the cell, it can enter the nucleus at step four and attach to receptors that are in the nucleus. Now, these receptors are types of proteins that once they have been activated by the steroid can actually then switch on certain genes in the DNA. And that would be in step five. Well, when these genes are switched on, the DNA is going to allow for protein synthesis to take place in step six. This will require translation of the DNA into messenger RNA, and then that goes out to the ribosomes at step 7, and translation takes place where a new protein is going to be made. Now that protein then is going to alter the activity in the cell, just depending on what type of protein. The second type of hormone is called a non-steroid hormones. Now these also need receptors to bind with, but recall that because they are non-steroid, they're not made of lipids, they can't just pass through the cell membrane. So they're going to be attaching to receptors on the cell membrane itself. They're not actually going to be getting inside of the cell. Let's take a look at how that happens. So in another wonderful drawing, the hormone is produced in a gland. It diffuses into the bloodstream. This time I made the hormones look like triangular shaped structures. And they're going to travel in step two to the target cell. Now, how they know they're at the right cell, of course, is because they can attach to the receptors. Cells have all different kinds of receptors on their cell membrane, and they can only attach to the ones that have the complementary shape to them. Once they've attached to the receptor, this is at step three, it causes a few changes to take place inside of the cell. So for instance, an ATP is going to be used here. That ATP is going to lose not one, but two phosphates. So it goes from ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to adenosine diphosphate, ADP, which loses a phosphate group, and now it becomes AMP, adenosine monophosphate. Now, a few changes take place, and it becomes a molecule called CAMP. which is short for cyclic AMP. Now this is considered a secondary messenger. Now CAMP is going to activate several enzymes, which are proteins that are already found in the target cell. These have been pre-made. Once these enzymes have been activated in step 6, that can then alter the function of that cell. So you can see there's some differences between the steroid hormones and the non-steroid hormones and how they work. The third group of hormones are called prostaglandins. Now these are found in very small concentrations, but they're very potent, and typically they're made right before they are released. They don't travel in the bloodstream like we see the other types of hormones. They're basically there to control things wherever they're made. So for instance, there might be some prostaglandins that are made in the tubes, the bronchi of the lungs, that will cause them to dilate to make them larger or maybe constrict depending on what needs to happen. So that's a real quick look at the different types of hormones and how they work. In the next video, we're going to take a look at how hormones are controlled. And I'll see you then.